Radio Universal, What America Voice, KQWZ 106.5 Low Power FM en South King County y KTQA 95.3 Low Power FM en Tacoma y Pierce County unen su señal para llevar hasta ustedes el siguiente programa.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
August 21st of 2022, and we're here with the show Siembra here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, Tacoma, Washington, and I like when they hear Washington, they think it's Washington, D.C., but we're here in this beautiful state that I actually love because one day you have the sun and it's really warm, and the next day God bless us with rain. That I was absolutely shocked when I got up this morning and saw the rain. But God is so good because He knows we needed it. We're not used to having that mugginess that we had yesterday with the weather. And here we have, this is the third Sunday of. And
Welcome.
I also have Mr. Arnie Berheim, and please let me know if I'm killing your name because I have my little accent. And we're gonna have a very, very good show this morning. We're gonna have a show. Pastor Dennis is a author. You know my accent. He has his first book, and we're gonna talk about his book. And we're going to talk a little bit about, not a little bit, the show is about Pastor Book. We can see it right there, fostering healthy, we got a healthy soul. And I start reading the book. I had started reading the first chapter, and I am a person that if you don't grab me with the first chapter, I'm not going to continue reading. I actually got President Obama first book that was let me look here. His book, I even bought it, Dreams from My Father, and I started reading it. But President Obama, the beginning of the book is just like how he talks. It takes long, and I like, President Obama, please get into the book, please. I never finished the book because it just took too long. So, but this, I just started the first chapter, and it grabbed me, and I didn't have enough time to read it. I'm gonna read it when I'm done, because more and more I read. Actually, this morning I was reading how do you call it?
Introduction.
The introduction. No, the last thing that you put, like
putting it all together.
Yes, and that is actually, I was reading it and said, this is interesting. I need to read this book now because of just, So, with I like to, more than anything, and I'm like all over the place now, but I like to talk a little bit about what's going on locally and what's going on nationwide and what's going on internationally. Right now, we have the big thing about the ex-president that they raid. According to him, they raided his own, but it depends on who said it was raid, and hopefully we get to, I don't know, because I think Americans don't believe that anything that United States can get into a dictatorship or autocratic government. And I think, I speak to Americans and they say, oh, no, that's never going to happen here. And we got to be mindful because we're right there on the edge. We are right there. We are in a dangerous zone when it comes to the way the country is divided. Is very concerning to me. So, and I'm telling everyone, just get involved, because even though we are 99% and the rich and powerful is 1%, we can also push for change by just maybe stopping to work. I'm thinking if nationwide, the whole country stops, everybody stops, buses, train, plane, stop. Maybe we get the attention of these politicians and remind them that we put them there and they are working for us. So that's one of the things so we got to get very involved. The other thing I want to talk is about the Ukraine, that we're still going to continue with the Ukraine war, pray, and also Ethiopia. And I'm saying it in Spanish. There is a lot of stuff going on in Africa that we are not aware of. And I think a lot of times we put emphasis on the countries that are basically Europe, and we don't think about Africa. There is, in Ethiopia, there is a crisis right now with the war that is going on there. It's very concerning. So we don't, I don't know, internationally, we don't get news from other parts of the world. And that is sad because we are part of this. We are all part of this. You know, the monkeypox, there's vaccine out there for people. 14,000 people are infected with the virus. So we want to make sure we're mindful and think and not just blame and look at just that one community. We have to look at everything. And, you know, I was talking to a friend and he said, well, yeah, that is the gay community virus. I said, no, it's not. And why we label and put stuff into a group or a community, I don't understand it. Elections are coming in November. Please go out and vote locally. It's very, very important to vote locally. It has to do with the water that we drink. It has to do with the environment, the taxes, the school. It has to do also with the minimum wage, all these things. So we need to start voting locally, you know. And okay, so I think, and I wanted to ask you guys about a little bit about the elections and stuff that's going on right now. What do you guys think about right now what happened in Kansas? I think it was Kansas that happened with the abortion. And we also, right now, there is Arizona and we have Wyoming with Liz Cheney. I was going to say Taylor. Liz Cheney. So what do you guys think about what's going on when it comes to the politics? Just a little bit, just to give me a little bit of...
You know, that what we've really seen in the last couple of years is a groundswell from the bottom, raising issues, raising concerns, and that includes Black Lives Matter, that includes politics, that includes you know, the nationalists. All of that is coming from the bottom up, and so we're definitely seeing a unique time period in which instead of everything being top down, which is a lot of our history has been top down, the way things work. But especially with the elections, something I've heard that was really interesting the other day is that when they look at the trends in voting, the Democratic Party, the trend in the Democratic Party is higher educated people. That number is growing, the number of people that claim to be Democrat. And those that don't claim to have any higher education, that number is growing in the Republican Party. So the Republican Party, because of their politics, is turning their back on the educated. But it's the educated that, by and large, do most of the voting. The people who don't have the higher degrees tend not to vote as often. So that's another thing that's happening, is the Democratic Party is increasing in the number of voters, and the Republicans are shrinking regarding the number of voting. It's insane that the Republican Party is choosing the non-voters over the voters. So that's an interesting development that's been happening. So, and also the groundswell, people are tired of being told what policy should be. With the Black Lives Matter, with the Me Too movement, and I mentioned some of the other movements in the book. Those people are saying, I have an opinion and I want it acknowledged. I want it recognized. And we saw that happen in Kansas, a state that has been dictated to their entire history. And now there's a groundswell from the bottom, just like in Georgia. There's a groundswell from the bottom that's saying, we've had enough of this. We want to have input too.
Arnie, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm more of an individual that takes a look at what's valuable. And human life is valuable, without a doubt. Multicultures is totally valuable. Appreciating one another, loving one another. And as far as politics, I don't really claim to be in or support a particular party. I believe that America is going through awakening up. And I think the silent majority, as it was called several years ago, is going to start raising its head. And it's going to start coming out in the vote. And I agree with everything Dennis said. The Republican Party, in my view, is more of a party of sheep. They follow one leader and whatever that leader says, they follow. And where the Democratic Party is more of a party for the people, all people, not just rich, not just poor, but the middle class and in between. So politics to me is very important, but I think we are such a nation of sheep, and being in a flock, we know our shepherd's voice, and he knows his sheep. But sometimes I think politics is being invaded by the church, and especially from the mega evangelicals. And I think they're missing the whole point, that they really need to see what the scripture has to say and follow scripture and let that be your guide, not what your neighbor said, not what you heard on Fox News or MSNBC, but what your heart says. Take everything to the Lord in prayer and meditate and fast. And I think that's important, because God will speak. And when he does speak, you better listen, because it's a two-way conversation. And I think in the politics of this world, we're being dictated to. And I think a lot of the party is surrounded with some congressmen and senators, for that matter, that are so out of touch with the will of the people. When I hear that term from any politician, the American people want, I don't think you really know what they want. That would be my question to them. What do they want? Because to me, it sounds like they're really being mandated by an outside group, lobbyist or whatever you want to call them. But they're not doing the will of the people. The only thing that's bipartisan is greed and power. Those are the only two things.
And it goes together. Now, with that said, Ernie, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit of how did you guys know each other? So we can go into the book. Yes, I'm excited.
Okay.
So, yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Norwegian-born person. Came over here in 1951 with my parents. I went through Ellis Island, and we came out here to Washington State, where my grandfather established, a home. I ended up going to local schools. I ended up graduating from high school and being drafted into the military during the Vietnam era. Ended up serving as a Navy Special Ops. And basically, I've just been a man who works hard, but I ended up going into telecommunications, working with AT&T and Lucent Technologies and Avaya, and ended up climbing the ladder in management, and ending up being a vice president of operations. So I always try to feel the heartbeat of people. And even as a manager, I would always ask my employees, or I call them my direct reports, how are you being treated? And so I can make sure that we are doing better than good, and we can fix what is bad. And how I met Dennis, that's an interesting one too. I mean, he reached out to me, and we attended the same church in different time periods. I ended up at his previous church, and under the leadership of J.F. and Ashley Wilkerson, the senior pastors, and ended up becoming an elder of that church. And then things kind of went in a different direction. But when I met Dennis, it was through common things like the church. And then when I discovered he was writing a book, he blessed me by giving me an advance copy. And like you, the first chapter grabbed me.
Yes, I know. Yes, it's pretty good. And so Pastor Dennis, question for you. Why is that you decided that you wanted to write a book? When and why you said, I need to write a book?
Well, I have thought about writing a book for several years, just because as I have been involved in pastoral ministry, I had lots of people that would tell me, you have a unique way of taking something and putting it in an easy to understand language. And I thought, there's some stuff in the Bible that is too complicated for a whole lot of people to be able to grasp. And so I've thought for a long time that at some point, if there was something worth writing about, that I would like to try that. But in this particular case, before the past president Trump took office, I had become increasingly aware that the Republican Party was subjugating the church to their political persuasion. And initially, it didn't grab me because I realized, that the church isn't independent. The church doesn't have to buy into this thing, and some churches will and some churches won't. Well, the number of churches that bought into it just ballooned overnight. And so I really realized I needed to try to address that issue. But then when Trump was supported in such mass by evangelicals, I thought, wait a minute, for people to vote for something that the Bible tells us or would classify as the Antichrist, the church supports them as if they were the Christ. I realized this was more than just an individual thing. There was something theological that was behind all of this. There was something more base to our religious experience. that was allowing people to do this and feel good about it, or at least get not feel bad about it, at least. So that's what drove me to do research and to understand the theology that we believe, and where maybe the theology that we claim to believe is right, but what we're actually practicing is off color. And so that's why I wrote this book, because I realized in the book I have 16 different issues where theology, we have perverted theology and turned it lethal. And so I talk about those things in the Bible. So does that answer your question?
Yes. The title. Well, why that title?
Because religion can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Mm-hmm. Historically, if we go back to mythology, and you read all of those gods from mythology, you realize that they don't have a positive attitude about humanity. There is an attitude of competition. Mm-hmm. There's an attitude of distrust, and there's an attitude of making the common person pay for things. And that is not at all what Christianity is supposed to be about. But nonetheless, we have seen that attitude creep into the church. And so a lot of modern Christianity is unhealthy, because people are living their Christian lives based out of fear, based out of manipulation, based out of a feeling of being inadequate, of not being good enough. And they're trying to achieve God's acceptance and God's love. And that's not what Christianity is supposed to be about. That's not what Jesus taught.
And basically, it's talking about the Old Testament, that atonement that we constantly had to be sacrificing for our sins. It's just a repackaged in a different way in the Christian
world.
Christian world. It's repackaged, the Old Testament. Now, Arnie, tell me what it is that grab you, and how it is that you feel that this book spoke to you, or is speaking to you. Did you finish reading it, or are you still reading it?
No, I've actually read the entire book, and
wow!
I've gone back and reread. When it comes to reading, I'm not a person that has a quota of books that I want to read. Uh-huh. I'm a type of individual that when I find a book and it grabs me, because a lot of books I've read, I might read 2 or 3 chapters and then maybe jump into the middle and then jump into the end of the book just to kind of get an idea start to finish. And sometimes I find that, you put the book down, you don't pick it back up. With Dennis's book, it was hard to put down. And one of the reasons is this book covers the most important understandings of how we think of being a child of God looks like and feels like. Mm-hmm. And when the first chapter talked about his family and his mother, I can relate, because my mom and dad were very, very devout Christians. And we went to several different churches when we came over to this country trying to find the right one to meet our needs. And And as a young boy at the time, I just followed along. But some of the churches that we attended were really Pentecostal. And some of it made me feel uncomfortable as a little boy because I didn't understand it. And this book brought that out, that influence of our parents, especially in younger ages. The influence of parents will definitely mold us in who we become. But what I liked about Dennis's book, it also made me realize what I knew and what I didn't know by some of its profound teaching. It was just incredible. I just found myself, man, I've never heard that before. I never looked at it that way before. Mm-hmm. And so as I read further and further, some of the chapters needed to be reread to make sure that I was really receiving what I was reading. And it answers more questions than asking them. And that's one of the things that I really found in this book. And the political part that he brings out is so true, because when we put people in power, we look up to them to serve us. That's why we placed them there. But when it came to certain things that was happening after Obama, and I voted for Republicans, I voted for Democrats, I voted for Obama. I looked at the character of the individual, and I didn't realize some of the tools I was using, Dennis wrote in the book, and what to look for. But there is one verse that really stuck out to me in 2 Timothy, if I may read it. 2 Timothy 3:1-5 in the NIV version, it says, "But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power." And in the last sentence, it says, "have nothing to do with such people." And I thought, you know what? When I read that, who came to my mind? It was President Trump, who I did not support. I did not support his views, and I definitely got upset when the mega evangelicals gave so much support and used. And what really upsetted me is the one time that he held the Bible up for a photo op and then ended up autographing Bibles. And I thought, this is sacrilegious.
I don't know.
So when I take a look at that, I started thinking, well, okay, so which part of Dennis's book does Trump fall into? Which part of his book does our current president fall into? And so that's how I kind of read things that really grasp me. I use it as a way to value people and to weigh. When something happens, I'm not a quick to react. I pause. I take a breath, I pause, because there's nothing worse than when there's an action to have a overreaction back. And because a lot of times you eat your own words because you said it out of anger. But verses like that, and just one more, in Romans 16, verses 17-18, also in the NIV, "I urge you, brothers and sisters, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teachings you have learned. Keep away from them, for such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk, flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people." And in his book, he brought that out, and I had to take a look at some of the church experiences that I've had and why that church acted that way. But his book answered that question that I had. why they're acting that way. It's because of what they're lacking. And that is really getting, a lot of people say, Arnie, you really get into the Word. And I wish I could be like that. And I go, dude, you got to get into the Word for the Word to get into you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to read the Word for it to get into you.
But, I think when we said read, one other thing is that everybody processes the Word differently. And even this book, you're going to look at that book and read it, and I might see very different than what you see it. But my question for all three of us, because I also met Pastor Dennis at church. I don't know if I should mention it or not, but Church for All Nations too. And how are we end up here? This is my question. All three of us end up here transitioning and questioning, because I question a lot of things. All my life, I have this thing that I get restless. If everything gets into a routine, and that is what I find myself when I was going to church. It just became a routine, and I say it has to be more than this, than just going in, clacking on Sundays and clacking out on Sundays, or going to the Bible. And for me, when I look at God, now my question for the two of you, what is religion and what is it spiritually being? And how do you guys, it looked like for Pastor Dennis and his family, just reading the first chapter, there was something that the whole family didn't conform. That's why that was that church search. There was that search of you guys looking, because it was something that you said, you went to this church and this just doesn't feel right. And then you went to another church and you said, this just doesn't feel right. And I don't know if this is a part of the DNA of our family, because now, Arnie, you saying your mom, and you still in that young age, you felt that there was something that wasn't that right. So we find ourselves, all three of us, sitting here transitioning. And when is that part started? And when you realize that this is religion, this is man-made rules, and this is God, because God is loving God. So I want to start with you, Ernie, and then Pastor Dennis answer is to see.
Well, to me, it's the church life is like getting on a bus. You sit on the left side, you sit on the right side. On the left side is the ocean. On the right side is the mountain. And your views are different, but you're on the same bus heading in the same direction. Mm. And if you allow Jesus to be your driver, it doesn't really, I can look up, I could be sitting on the mountainside and Dennis can be sitting on the ocean side, and I go, man, Dennis, look at that beautiful hillside full of snow. Isn't that amazing? And Dennis can come back to me and say, not as amazing as these whales that are jumping in the ocean. So we're seeing two different things as the bus is traveling. So as we're traveling through our spiritual life, our God-given life in serving Him, it's not what other people's really view, but we're on the same bus for a reason. Mm-hmm. We might have different views out the window, but we're on the same bus for the same reason, because we're heading to the same destination. And in life, as we travel down this road of life, we're going to look at things differently. And even in Dennis's book, there are some things that I went, but we're heading in the same direction. You know what I'm saying? It's like, my wife and I, we like to go to movies, and she likes popcorn, and I like popcorn if it has butter on it. And she doesn't want butter on it. You know what I'm saying? So you have to give and take a little bit. But like I've told a lot of other examples, is like, in marriage, and when I did marriage counseling, I would say that, the first thing that you have to understand is that we might want to buy a new car. We might agree on the make and model, but I guarantee you we won't agree on the paint. And so, do we still buy that car? Yes. And is it a give and take? Yes. But we still got the car we want. It's not the paint. It's not what we see. It's the car. And so that's my interpretation.
So, so when it is that you realize that something had to change, like in church, like I was saying, at one point I said, there has to be more than this. I was going to Bible church, I was taking my son, I was even helping, but at one point I said, no, this can't be all that this is. Yeah. And for me, it was getting out of those four walls. It's almost like Pastor Dennis said in his book, tribalism. We go in and we form a community, and we should be doing that. I was thinking in my head, what do I am recycling religion? I'm recycling the word. I'm recycling because these people already know the word. They already know why we not out there. So, Arnie, what it is? What was that point that you said no? This has to change. I need to transition out of this. There has to be more of just going to church and just clacking in and clacking out.
Well, I think a lot of it is churches become repetition. They just become repetition. You go and you're going to get the same thing. Now, being an ex-military man, serving with other Navy SEALs, we took an oath, a lifetime oath, and we have that oath. But what bothers me, all of a sudden, my surroundings of that repetition. I will use the Pledge of Allegiance as an example, which always gets me in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway. That we say the Pledge of Allegiance, but when it comes to the phrase in that allegiance, liberty and justice for all, I don't see it.
Amen.
And so I have to question it. So when you go to a church, you'll find something that you will make you question. So for me, saying the Pledge of Allegiance is a repetition that people do, but they don't mean it. I wish and pray that they would mean it. I wish I could honestly say the Pledge of Allegiance to America. Not that I don't. I've served my country. But that Pledge of Allegiance means a lot. But it's a repetition to most people because they're not treating people. They're not treating the people equally. And I'm an equality person. If you've known me through the years, you'll find that I was pushing for women's rights, equal pay years ago in my leadership roles. So to answer your question, church, it becomes like that. It becomes repetition. It's like, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm listening. I want to go home and watch the Seahawks. Really, come on, Pastor, speed it up. And that's what made me think something's wrong here. And religion to me is a title, just like wearing a cross is a marker. Does it really mean that you believe in that? Or are you just showing a marker that you are a Christian? But religion is, Christianity, it's a relationship. The bottom line, it's a relationship. And when I hear about Revelation and it's 666 Antichrist, especially nowadays with a lot of the signs, I don't know if we're living in end times, but we're definitely living in strange times. And there's a lot of indicators that we might be, but I just think, once again, like I said earlier, you have to weigh in value and you have to question, but, get close to God. When I was asked to be an elder, when I was asked by my pastor, would you like to be an elder? And I said, let me go home and pray and fast over it. Because I don't want to be an elder unless I'm not called. I can be asked by man, but I need to be called by God, because that's a huge responsibility. And the Lord did speak to me, and I became an elder, but I wanted to serve the membership. That was my main goal. And then I saw how our church didn't have that same. And so it's just little bits here and there that made me realize there's something different. And of course, the older you get freedom. Like Norwegians eat lutefisk. Well, I stopped eating lutefisk when I got bigger than my dad. But it's just those things in the church life. And I think the biggest killer of faith is repetition.
I just can't do it. But Pastor Dennis, tell me when it is that you got up one day and said, no. And I don't think you got up, because I read in your book, you don't just got up and said something. I'm now reading your book, that is in your DNA.
Yeah.
That was in your DNA, that you are not conformed, that you're going to get out of that line, and you're going to create your own path. It's still talking about God, because one of the things I like from your book too is that we have different ways of calling and seeing God. But at the end, like Arnie said, we in this bus. We in this bus looking at different views, but the end is the same. So for you, when it is that you, and again, I don't want to say you just got up, because I think with your mom and your family, that was already there.
Well, you can have that nonconformist as a part of your background, but religion is conformity. It's learning to become what the church, the denomination, the religion, whatever it is, says you should be. Okay, and as much as we don't like that, it's real. Okay, and so even if you have some of that nonconformity stuff going on in your background, you find yourself learning to conform. But at some point, when you have conformed, then you start wondering, well, what's next? Is this all there is? Mm-hmm. I've done what I'm supposed to do to conform. But Christianity was not about a system being in place. I just posted a meme that basically talked about, that we're supposed to look like Christ, not look like the church. You know what I'm saying? And that's not the wording. Just as I was about ready to quote it, the exact wording went out of my head. But what Jesus taught was a vision for relationship, for bringing the best out in our world and in society, and standing up for the disenfranchised, the disconnected, those that don't have the ability to make things happen as easily as some of us do. And when there is a vision, the Bible talks about without vision, the people perish. Mm-hmm. And if we are an envisioning people, there is no such thing as arriving. We need to continually find bigger and better ways to do whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? and that's true in our relationships. You know, the problem with religion is we often make our beliefs about something that we can achieve, where the Bible makes it about relationship. Does that make sense?
And I don't know, it makes sense, but I don't know about the Bible. I know some people, and my mom, that is very religious, gonna pull her hair. I don't believe everything that the Bible said. And I don't believe everything that it says, because there's some things that, even the Bible talks about slavery, the Bible talks about women underneath men, and the woman shouldn't preach. So even following the Bible to me is questionable, because again, we have to, that humanity that makes me a human being has to question certain things. Like even when my son, when he was young, he used to take spiders and ants and put them in little bottles, boys. And I used to tell him, do you would like somebody to put you in there and you can't go nowhere? And he would say, no, Mom. So I said, okay. So just basic things like that you should question, because you are a human being and thinking about treating people the way you would like to be treated. And there's parts in the Bible that I really don't believe, because I said this is man-made. This was put in the Bible again to control and manipulate people.
Well, and that's a good point. Really, it is crucially important how we view the Bible. Okay, we have traditionally in the United States, in the evangelical world, seen the Bible as a book of prescriptions. Okay, if you do this,
and God forbid if we question it.
Yeah, but the Bible, if you were to talk to a Jewish person, a Hebrew, about how they look at the Bible, they look at the Bible as a problem to be solved, whereas we look at the Bible as a declaration to be declared. We look at it very prescriptively. We look at it very much like there is a business transaction that's happening. But the Bible is really a record of people's interactions with God and people's growth in their understanding of God. So if we look at it as prescription, then everything in there is a prescription that fixes something. But if it is a record of transformation,
and I'm thinking it's more of a book of telling stories and how the relationship between God and human being, and how God in certain ways look at man and his creation. But to me, and that's when I at one point in my life when I read the Bible, I said you used to say everything in the Bible is good, and I said no, everything in the Bible is not good. It's just telling you the nature of man and God. I think for me, that's the way I look at the Bible.
Well, the Bible is trying to lead us somewhere. It's not trying to tell us that every perspective in it is good or correct. That's not the point of the Bible. The point of the Bible is we're people in transition. We're people growing. We're people moving in the right direction. So, some of those things about slavery and about women and about all of that stuff, we have to see the progression from where they started to where they are when they're making that declaration. This is not a final product. The Old Testament has a lot of messed up ideas
I
are
know.
promoted there. The idea that God would instruct anybody to murder the nation next to them because they weren't pure enough. That is so disturbing on so many levels. But that is the world they lived in. That's the mindset they had. And God was taking them from that messed up worldview and bringing them further than they previously were. And so we need to read those stories as a people in transition, not as people who have arrived. That Old Testament, there's a lot of flawed stuff in there. There's a lot of flawed thinking. There's a lot of flawed perspectives. Sometimes God addresses those issues, and sometimes he says, I'm going to talk about it later in a better context. And he doesn't challenge it. He just leaves it alone. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if we understand it from that perspective, it's a powerful text. But it certainly is not everybody in every perspective in the Bible is not redeemed.
Yeah.
And doesn't reflect God at all.
Arnie, you had something to say. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, the Bible, we also have to realize it's cultural driven. There's the culture, just like when we talk about Paul. Mm-hmm. We got to remember Paul's background. He was highly educated as a Pharisee, and for him to overcome that. But when it comes to reading stories in the Bible, when I, like I said earlier, I've always promoted women and women's rights and equality. And I try to remind men, especially, that think they're superior when they say, I'm the head of the household. I say, well, you better read Genesis over again, because when God created man, he grabbed a bunch of dirt. Mm-hmm. And he formed man and blew into his nostrils, and he became flesh. When he created woman as a partner, not as a slave, not as a piece of human life that you own. That woman is a partner, and that woman is to make man better. And then after forming the man out of dirt, and then he grabbed the side of man and formed a woman out of flesh. So I remind men, when your woman calls you a dirtbag, she's speaking scripture. Because the truth of the matter is that women have always been more open and more honest. Even in the garden, after they bit into the apple, God, was trying to find them, but they were naked and they were ashamed. And when God found Adam, why did you eat? What did he say? He said, woman made me do it. And then when he asked the woman, why did you eat? He goes, I was deceived, therefore I ate. So this whole thing isn't really about man and woman. And the Bible has never saved a life. The Bible gives direction, gives correction, and it leads you to the person that can save a life.
Yes.
And give you salvation. So when you look at the Bible, it's a guide.
Exactly.
It's a roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those chapters are written by different culture. And then when it gets found and transcribed into our language, there's a lot of the meanings that are missing. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have so many different translations. But we just have to remember that when the Bible was created for correction, for guidance, and to give you a path on how to have eternal life, and through whom. But we need to understand the background of a lot of these people.
And how do you see this in this book? Because right now I'm looking at the chapter 1, the putting it all together, and I don't want to tell too much because we want people to go buy the book. But I'm looking at through this creed, and I'm going to read it. Through this creed, we acknowledge that we have shared beliefs with a large number of people, even taught our revelations. You know what, Pastor Dennis, go ahead and you read it, because me and my accent. But I love this. I love this.
Okay, which page are we talking about?
We're talking about page 10. That is first chapter, putting it all together at the end.
First chapter. Okay, just a minute here.
It's like a summary of the chapter at the end.
Yeah, no.
I love this. I was reading and I said, wow. But I don't want to kill it with my accent.
Okay, which paragraph?
It says, through this creed, before the questioning, through this creed, we acknowledge. Okay.
Through this creed, and the creed referenced here is the Apostles' Creed.
Okay.
Which is also listed there. Through this creed, we acknowledge that we have shared beliefs in large numbers with large numbers of people. Even though our revelations may differ, our response to this creed should lead us to dialogue and learn where our differences come from and what we can learn from each other. So, this is not about something we conform to. This is like Arnie said, this is a roadmap teaching us, this is where we're headed. So let's all talk about this and figure out how to get there.
So
Tell you.
When I think about this, I think about I'm thinking about the Jehovah Witness, and I'm thinking of the Muslims, and I'm thinking all of them are seeking this thing that is bigger than life, because we have it inside and we just call it different. But when I think of people that come and tell me, I remember the Jehovah Witnesses, they want to come and debate with you, and they want to kind of tell you why their religion and the way they look at God is better than you. And then Christians, we do the same thing. How do we get to that place where we're not trying to change people the way they worship and the way they look at God, instead of, like you said here, that I absolutely love, is all these different religions can sit and just say, you know what, I know you're looking for God, you're looking for the same thing that I'm looking for. Instead of changing, we want to change people and tell, I have the right way, I have the right God, I do.
It's really hard to break free from that, especially when we grew up in the evangelical world, because we're taught the idea that we have to convert the world. It's our conversion of the world that's going to bring Christ back. And so it's ingrained in us to do that. But it's not our job to convert. That's God's job. He's the one that convinces people of right and wrong. We are to be a testimony to what God can do and who he is. So when we're having these discussions, it's not about converting anybody. This is about understanding God and the nature of things better. And, if you can help me see things better, then you have blessed me. If you don't, then let me see if I can challenge you to see something better. You know what I'm saying? But if we are involved in a conversation to be blessed through the results of it, then we come out winners. But if we're trying to make people believe and conform to our worldview, we're just frustrated. And I really struggled with that when I first, probably about 4 years ago, I had trained to be a coach, and I had done a lot of coaching throughout my life. But awareness that there was a designated type of role called coach, I wanted to take some formal classes on exactly what does that entail and what can I learn from them and how to coach better. And one of the things that I discovered from coaching was that as a Christian, I come to any conversation with a loaded agenda. And all of a sudden, I was talking to Muslims. I was talking to homosexuals. I was talking to Buddhists. I was talking to people that had a whole different worldview from them. And I can't coach them if I can't be open-minded. And if I can't be involved in helping improve their lives instead of convert them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I had to realize that my differences from them, that might give me some help in knowing how to pose questions to them. But it did not offer me any insight into how to help them be better people.
And Pastor Dennis, I was looking and go back to Arnie. I was thinking when we talk about the abortion that he said something that he is pro-life, and I was thinking about what he was saying, because at the same time we live in a country that is concerning and very concerning what's going on, because we even put in that religion, state, and separation of state and religion is right now in a whole pot. It's stuff. And when you said that, I was thinking what you were saying is that even though we know maybe that having an abortion, I don't agree with it, I think it's killing or taking a life, you have to see the humanity of that person and the free will that God gave us to make choices. Whether I can sit back, I have a 24-year-old son, that I have to let him take control of his life and autonomy and make his own mistakes. And then he has to deal with God, or whatever that is, right? And I think, you guys tell me, this country, I look at it in the we go into a theocratic country that the evangelic community love this guy, Donald Trump, because they feel that they have this agenda that they can take their personal religious beliefs and make it law. And how do you guys feel about this? Because also I'm looking, I want Pastor Dennis to read the last part of that chapter, but I want you guys to tell me how it is that we are here, where God give us free will and autonomy. And even though I don't agree with you in certain things, I just got to pull back. I can push. I can make it law the way I feel and believe when it comes to area of your personal life, like being gay or having abortions.
Well, for me, the abortion issue is twofold. It's about taking a life, but it's also like taking away liberty from a certain group. Mm-hmm. And Murder is murder, death is death. There are already laws for murder. It is one of the most difficult situations. And what Dennis was, when he was talking about Muslims and you were making mention of Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff, that's exactly what is wrong with America today. We're trying to shove our political beliefs through the voice of Christianity. And there should be a separation of church and state without a doubt. I used to chuckle and then kind of feel really bad when I saw Ronnie Reagan on TV when he would talk about separation of church and life, or church and government. And then he claimed that he was an atheist and not afraid to burn in hell. And that kind of bothered me. His statement is true that we should be separate.
That's Ronald Reagan's son.
Yes, his son.
Yes, just to make sure.
Yeah, no, his son.
Yes.
And so his statement is correct. And his view is out of line. Because it is a twofold issue. And we can go back to the Old Testament. We can talk about how God sent the angel of death and took the firstborn. I just think we'll never, as human beings, will understand this issue. But I have an issue with men trying to control the bodies and the well-being of women. I don't understand I understand the difference between men and women, don't get me wrong, but I don't understand the feelings of women as much as I understand the feelings of men. That's why, men are men and women are women, but we're all human. And we all have same emotions. So I guess the bottom line to me is when it comes to abortion, you want to ban it, and yet you want to ban birth control, but you're more than willing to fund Viagra. It's so unbalanced.
And you don't
standing army.
And you don't want to ban guns. So it's like, I don't know. But Pastor Dennis, tell us how do you feel about this? Because I'm thinking, how do we get here? Like, now we have an agenda where the politicians and the religious community are joining forces to put this on us. And Kansas, for some reason said, and they make a statement saying, we are going to fight it. We're not going to let this happen.
Yeah. Well, this is not something I really talk about in the book, but the issue here is forcing your views on somebody else. What was revolutionary about Jesus' teachings was that it had to be a matter of conscience. To truly be a Christian, it's your conscience that needs to come into line, not your behavior. It's your conscience. And that was the huge thing, was that people had to be convinced of this. They couldn't just do it because they were told to do it. They had to be convinced of it. And a conscience is a core issue of the Bible. People being able to live by the dictates of their conscience, and that God works with a person to mold that conscience. You can't legislate conscience. You can legislate behavior, but that doesn't make anybody a healthy person, or doesn't make them a Christian. We have a lot of Christians today that are Christian by behavior, not because of conscience. They don't know what they believe. They don't know why they believe it. They just know what they're supposed to be like. what they're supposed to do.
And
That's Christianity.
And Pastor Dennis, that's why I wanted you to read this, because it says regarding other religions. If you can read that part, because go ahead.
Well,
It's in the same.
It's further down in that same paragraph.
Yes. Regarding other religions.
Regarding other religions, does it start a paragraph? What does the paragraph start with?
It starts through this creed. We acknowledge, remember you read it earlier, we have shared beliefs in large numbers of people, even taught our relations might differ. Our response to this creed should lead us to dialogue and learn where our differences come from and what we can learn from each other. Then I skipped the other paragraph. I like this one. Regarding other religions, we must ask ourselves if a loving God will shut off his revelation to anyone, whether we can see on the surface any truth or not. We at least need to be open to the idea that God can reveal his character and heart to anyone, even those who use very different words and traditions than they understand, and that the God we know and love. I have met people from faith traditions I have never thought could know God, but as I go to know them, my heart bore witness with theirs.
Exactly. Yeah. We are so caught up in names and ideas of language that we don't tend to look at a person's heart. I remember a family that my parents worked with when I was young. They were Mormons, and of course, back then Mormons were a cult. To think of voting a Mormon into office, that was worse than destroying the entire nation, because cults spoke the devil's work, and you were afraid of them. But this family had a pure heart for God. They loved people. They loved the Bible. There was no conversion in their heart, converting somebody from this tradition to that tradition. Mm-hmm. They cared about the person, and they cared about that person's relationship with Jesus. And it was a transforming thing for my parents to admit that this Mormon family, these were real, genuine Christians. Shock of all shocks. I recently interacted with a Muslim guy who advocates that he is a follower of Jesus Christ. And listening to him talk, I was astounded that he sounded more Christian than some pastors I know. It was just mind-blowing, but I really realized it's the heart that's the issue. Mm-hmm. Trappings don't matter. We can use biblical terminology to say totally different things. We can believe the same doctrinal statement and have a vastly different view about what a Christian is. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We have to be able to do that. We have to be able to get past the externals and go to the heart.
And what I wanted to say is that one of the things I was thinking, and I think I talked to you about this, Pastor Dennis, that for some reason we are created. The Bible says in Genesis 1:27 that we was created in God's image, and for some reason we are created a God in our image. We have created a God in our image. One of the things, because I know we are getting close to closing, what would you want people to take from this book? What it is you want people to take from this book? You wrote this book, and one of the things about, let me read the subtitle. Is the subtitle? Let me get it. Because when you said disillusionment, escaping spiritual, that is what a lot of us felt. I felt that way. And people, I remember people saying, "You are so mad about the church." I said, that I grew up too. My mom grew up transitioning into different religions. As Spanish, I grew up Catholic. And then from Catholic, my mom tried different things. And then from Catholic, we went to Christianity. But today, I don't want to call myself a Christian. I don't want to label myself like that, And we live in a time where my son, Pastor Dennis, you remember, I used to take my son to church. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want nothing to do with church. No. And we living in a generation that they don't want nothing to do. The godless generation this time, and kids that grew up in church like your daughter and my son, mm-hmm. that they don't want nothing to do with God. So what would you tell people that grew up in the church or went to church and today they say, I don't want nothing? Is this book for people to relate with that feeling that it's the church and it's not God? Because when people hear me say church, I don't want to go to church, and say, well, you don't want. I said, I love God, and God, I don't need to be in church to validate that relationship that I have with Him. But what would you tell people about this book? And Ernie, what it is you got from this book too that you felt that compelling and it was related to you too?
Well, I want to start out with giving you the title of a book that will be shocking to most. Written by Frankie Schaefer. I am an atheist that loves God.
Oh my, yes.
Okay. We, when you say kids don't want anything to do with church, I can accept. Mm-hmm. They don't want anything to do with God. I'm not so sure that I'm willing to accept mm-hmm. that. Okay. Most people that want nothing to do with church
has nothing to do with God. Yes,
are good with God.
Has nothing to do with God. Yeah.
And and a vast number of atheists are not opposed to God. They're opposed to your opinion of God. Mm-hmm. I have met all kinds of atheists and talked with them and had conversations with them. And at some point, I asked them, do you really not believe in God? Well, after talking to you, I do. I just don't believe in the God that I was taught to believe in. You know what I'm saying? And that's what, I think that's at the heart of my book, is you can reject the garbage that is happening in this world. You can have problems with the way people represent the church mm-hmm. and good and religion and whatever, but you can still have a healthy soul, because those things are misunderstandings of what spirituality is all about. Spirituality is about relationship. It's about caring for everybody. It's about making a difference in this world. It's about being tuned into the creator of all things, and why he created it in the first place, and what he wants it to look like at the end of time, if there is an end of time. We don't know that.
Ernie, and what it is you got from this book? We need to make it a little bit shorter, but yes, go ahead.
Well, the thing that I got from this book was a lot of answers to the questions I've had about church. And for me, it's been about the one thief on the cross, the simplicity. And I think Dennis's book brings out the simplicity that all it takes is belief. You know, we're not going to be defined by our behavior. We're going to be defined by what we believe. And so his book brings that out, that I'm okay with having some of those beliefs that I had in certain individuals or certain church groups. And it's okay. It's okay to be who I am, because I am a child of God. I don't like being called a Christian or religious. I like to be called a Jesus guy. I'm a Jesus guy.
Yes.
I'm not a Christian. I'm a Jesus guy, because it's a relationship.
Yes.
So his book makes it perfectly clear that these issues are real, but how does it affect you? And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to believe mankind or just trust? I'm a man of childlike faith. Jesus said it, I believe it. That's it. And his book kind of really brings that out.
So, and one of the things that I want to say, and then I go back to Pastor Dennis, is that more than anything is we look at each other as human beings, and that we want the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to be seen. We want all those things. We are human beings. We are part of that human race. We start looking at each other that way, that I want the same thing that you want. That should make it so simple. Now, Pastor Dennis, your book, tell us the title of your book and when it is and how much it is that it's going to be and where we can find it.
Well, actually, I was going to nail a lot of that down, but I'm selling it at an introductory level at this point. So for the first couple of weeks, the digital copy is 99 cents. The paper copy, I think it's currently $5.99. But what I wanted to do was find out how low I can make it, and sell it for that amount for the first couple weeks.
Where can we find it?
So you can find it on Google Books, you can find it on Amazon, and you can find it
Can you put it out so we can see it?
The book?
Yes.
Yes.
Fostering a healthy soul. So you guys that are listening,
so escaping
radio, tune in. And remember, we're celebrating the 5 years of anniversary of BT Radio Universal. So happy birthday to our radio station. We have 5 years out. And one of the things that I want you guys to check is this book, Fostering a Healthy Soul. And there's nothing, we are 3 parts. We are our soul, that is our spirit, I believe, and then we have our body, and then we have our mind. So having a healthy spirit is, I think, one of the most important things. Is the essence of who you are, really. That's who you are. I mean, this is the shell, but having a healthy soul is actually something that we have that connection with God. So I want to thank you for being in my show. Thank you, Pastor Dennis, for hosting with me, being my little side piece right here. And thank you, Ernie. I hope this is not the first time and the last time that we have you on my show. that we can sit and have really conversations about this. Because people say, well, I'm not religious. This is not about religious. This is about relationship with God, with that thing that is bigger, that person that is bigger than you. So I want to thank you guys for taking this time, and also have a beautiful weekend. I know you're going camping with your grandson. So have a beautiful, beautiful weekend, and you guys enjoy. Thank you for being a singer.
Yazmin and Arnie.
Yes,
thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.